So it's finally here, the Spider-Man Christmas special. If you've seen my Spider-Man Thanksgiving special, then you know the general idea behind this video. Basically, I take a look at any major holiday-related Spider-Man merchandise and media, and go through the history of each entry. Now, with the Thanksgiving special, there wasn't a bajillion Thanksgiving-themed Spider-Man items and media to go through, so it was a bit easier to cover most of the Thanksgiving-related stuff. That allowed me to put everything on a timeline from the 60s through the modern day and examine each entry in chronological order. Christmas, however, is a different story. Since this is the quintessential consumerist holiday, there is an endless amount of Spider-Man Christmas merchandise, whether it be decorations and ornaments or holiday-themed Spidey clothing. So I'm going to break the video down into segments that focus on specific items, rather than going through each decade. So whether you're wrapping gifts, doing Christmas shopping, decorating, or drinking your lonely holiday sorrows away, put this video on as a companion piece. Oh, also, the background music you'll be hearing is Christmasified versions of classic Spidey theme songs. I uploaded this music separately onto my YouTube channel, so if you want to listen to it, or even use it for one of your own Spidey Christmas videos, go check it out. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get into the Spider-Man Christmas special. Without a doubt, the biggest entries on this list are going to be the decorations, ornaments, and comic book specials. To start, we're going to examine the many Spider-Man Christmas decorations that have been released over the years. There's a specific company that has manufactured so much Spider-Man Christmas decor that I feel we need to briefly familiarize ourselves with them before spending portions of the video looking at their old products. What I'm talking about is Kurt S. Adler Inc., one of the biggest Christmas ornament manufacturers of all time. The company is named after its founder, Kurt S. Adler, who migrated to America at 16 years old to escape persecution of Nazi Germany in the mid-1930s. After World War II, he started a business based out of Manhattan that both imported and exported handcraft pottery and glassware, which eventually morphed into a Christmas-oriented business after having lucrative success with glass angel imports from the southeastern German state of Bavaria. After having successfully sold many European imported snow globes, figures, artificial trees, and miniature light strands to American retailers throughout the mid-20th century, Kurt S. Adler Inc. became the huge company that we know it as today. The earliest Spider-Man Christmas decor and ornaments I can find actually come from Kurt S. Adler in the early 1980s, under their Santa's World line of products. By the way, massive shout out to Bruce on the Spider-Man crawl space, who uploaded a video to his YouTube channel, Spidey and Me, that chronicles his gigantic Spider-Man Christmas collection. This guy is a lifelong Spider-Man fan and has one of the best, biggest Spider-Man collections I've ever seen, so it makes sense that his Spider Christmas game is so on point. I actually learned about the Santa's World decorations from his video. Speaking of, firstly, we have these Hulk and Spider-Man pull puppet stocking stuffers from 1981. There were also little pinball games featuring both Spidey and the Hulk from the same year and company. All of these items are super expensive if you can find them online. Speaking of stockings, there are what feels like an infinite amount of Spidey stockings to explore. There's no way I can go through all of them, but I'm going to try and at least highlight some of the coolest ones. Firstly, in Bruce's video detailing his Spidey Christmas collection, we can find an old white Spider-Man stocking featuring some classic John Romita artwork from the late 70s or early 80s. A commenter on the video states that it's also from the same Santa's World line of products that the aforementioned stocking stuffers are from. I can't find this thing online, so for now, that's what we'll go with, until someone can give a definitive answer. So past this point, it's going to be really hard to identify the exact year for each and every stocking, because there are just so many, and not every single item listing online chronicles such minutia like this. So if I can't give the exact date or manufacturer, I'll try to approximate the best I can. Firstly, I found a Mercari listing that kind of blew my mind. Apparently Marvel released these mini pop-up stockings in 1993 that featured some Christmas Spider-Man and Venom artwork on the tag and came with an issue of Death's Head 2. Wow, I've never seen that before in my life. Next, from the early 2000s, we have these Kurt S. Adler stockings featuring artwork that was everywhere in the late 90s and early 2000s on all the Spidey merchandise. I don't know who the exact artist behind this nostalgic merch is, and it seems like no one else does does either, although I have gotten in touch with some iconic Marvel artists, and they have possibly given me a definitive answer once and for all on who drew these images. But tune into my next video, in which we are chronicling Spider-Man merchandise from the 2000s to see what answers will be revealed. Anyway, I love the classic logo on this blue one from 2003, and I love how the Spider-Man image is kinda 3D. I also love the comic bookish cityscape in the background. Next, I found this red and white stocking with the same art style from 2002. There's also a mini white stocking showing the same artwork from 2003 that is just so cute. I love seeing that Ultimate Spider-Man tag. It brings back so many memories. Speaking of Ultimate Spider-Man, I found some stockings from 2004 that have that super nostalgic Mark Bagley art from the early Ultimate Spider-Man issues. I love the designs of both of these, especially the fact that the Spidey is once again kind of three-dimensional. But now, we have a stocking showcasing an actual three-dimensional Spider-Man from 2004. I assume this is Kurt S. Adler again, and I love the usage of the 90s animated series font, along with that little web-line Spidey shooting out. But what's this? No back spider emblem? I retract everything I said about this stocking.
0 out of 10.
Nah, I'm just joking. I was actually thinking about purchasing this thing because I love it so much. There's also a 2008 stocking that was apparently from Toys R Us that also has a 3D Spider-Man bust on the top, though this time it's hard plastic instead of the plush. And would you look at that? It has the back emblem this time around. The Spider Gods have delivered. This has that classic mid to late 2000s font that is usually known as the Spider-Sense Spider-Man merchandising font, and features some classic Scott Johnson artwork on the stocking. I love the little web that wraps around the top part of the stocking too. Seriously, this thing looks amazing. There's also this stocking from 2007 featuring a Scott Johnson Spidey that has a semi-3D Spidey drawing on it, much like those other ones from the early 2000s. Now this is really where I can't showcase and identify every single Spider-Man stocking, because the late 2000s through the current day has just had a massive influx in Spider-Man Christmas merchandise. It would just get outright boring at some point to go through each and every single stocking. So I'm going to highlight a few standouts that I personally like instead. There's a bajillion stockings showing the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon artwork, but I personally like this one with the Spider-Man ornaments quite a bit, as it captures the holiday spirit quite well. I feel the same way about this blue stocking showing the Spidey decorated tree. There was also this mini stocking that was released under the same Ultimate Spider-Man series merch line, but features some awesome retro Spidey art that was used on a good amount of products in the late 2010s. I like this 2015 stocking as well, with the top of the stocking being the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon mask, and the actual stocking image being from an artist whose work I've seen a lot on merchandising from this era, but couldn't actually identify in time for the video. So if you know who this is, please drop a line in the comments. Nowadays it seems like the go-to art style for stockings is still that of the 2017 Disney cartoon, which I believe is usually by artist Patrick Brown. These are cool, but what really sticks out to me is this Beyond Amazing stocking. I just love the classic feel of the costume and color scheme. I also like this super Christmassy stocking showcasing Spidey in a Santa hat with Christmas lights all around him. By the way, if you were to tell my 8-year-old self that one day there would be a stocking with Iron Spider on it, I would have never believed you. It's so crazy how there's an image of like every Spider character to ever exist now on some piece of merchandise here or there. This felt so much rarer when I was growing up. Did you know there exist Spider-Man stocking holders as well? The Kurt S. Adler one from 2003 is so cool, man. Obviously that box art is so nostalgic, but the actual sculpted Spidey itself looks great. The head sculpt seems to be the same as the old school Spider-Man Classics Amazing Fantasy 15 figure. I also found a more recent Spidey stocking hanger from St. Nicholas Square on Kohl's website that honestly looks pretty shoddy. So let's take things outside for a moment and look at some of the various Spider-Man yard decorations that have been released. There's this awesome 3-foot inflatable light-up Spidey shooting webs on a chimney from 2015. I found a listing for a pretty similar inflatable yard decoration that shows Spidey in the same pose with a different costume design and sitting on a green present. This seems to have been officially released by Marvel, though it seems like it's a bit rare, so I can't find the exact specifications about the date or anything regarding its release. There was also another Spidey inflatable yard decoration doing the same pose on a Christmas gift, but this time in a hat. This seems to also be from the Ultimate Spider-Man line, much like the first inflatable we looked at. There's a couple more Ultimate Spider-Man inflatable yard decorations from 2017, one being a lit Spidey in a crawling pose with a present slung around his back, and another showcasing Spider-Man in a fight with Doc Ock. Wow, they actually used the Ultimate cartoon design for Doc Ock. How interesting. I'm pretty certain that all of these inflatable balloons come from Gemi. Man, I really want to get one of these someday. It seems like there were no available listings for any of these whenever I was writing this portion of the video, though. Well, it's pretty cold out here in inflatable Spider-Man land, so let's warm up by going back inside and taking a look at some of the interior Spidey decor that's been released over the years. So whether or not candy canes are considered a decoration is totally up to you, but obviously you can put them on a tree, so screw it. Let's cover the candy canes here. First, we have this really awesome looking candy cane set from Asher Candies in 1994, showcasing some awesome packaging. It's the classic purple-tinged box art from the 1994 animated series merchandise. The candy canes had a really cool plastic wrap on them, with the 90s cartoon logo plastered all over it. This almost feels more like a holiday box set than it does just some candy canes. It includes the Marvel Milestone reprint of Amazing Spider-Man #1, which would later on be included with certain Marvel Legend figures in the early aughts, if I'm not mistaken. It comes with 3 trading cards, which appears to be a different set per each box of candy canes. And it even has a cardboard ornament on the back that you can piece together and put on your tree. That is just too cool. In Bruce's Spidey Christmas Stash video, we can see some more Asher candy canes from 2004 that feature that sweet, sweet Bagley Ultimate Spider-Man on a red, webbed-out box. I love how the candy canes look like they're part of Spidey's costume. I also found an eBay listing that showcases a box of candy canes from the children's toy line Spider-Man and Friends in the early 2000s, along with some candy cane and jelly Spidey candy canes in that classic Bagley box art. I really like those little hand-decorated hard jellies that came with those Spidey candy canes. Of course, in the modern day, we have seen candy canes from both the Ultimate Spider-Man and 2017 cartoon eras. Moving on, we're going to take a look at some Spidey Christmas tree decor. First, there's this spectacular set of Kurt S. Adler holiday string lights from the early 2000s that have these amazing fully sculpted blow molds. I actually have a set of these up in my apartment right now. My tree's already pre-lit, so I used that as an excuse to show off these beauties unobstructed. It's also worth noting that there was a couple sets of Spider-Man string lights in the 2000s for the Raimi films, though I'd rather direct you to Cream Fresh's YouTube channel for more info on that, as they're a great Raimi merchandiseologist. In the 2010s, the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon line of merchandise gave us this really cool tabletop Spidey Christmas tree, which apparently played Deck the Halls. I didn't find any video footage of it, but this sold eBay listing has some detailed photos. I love the little Spider-Man tree topper and all the Spidey ornaments. Man, I really want to buy this thing. In the present day, we have some Spidey Christmas decor that wants to make my wallet cheat on my bills really, really bad. At TJ Maxx, there's a ceramic 11.6-inch Spider-Man Christmas tree complete with red and blue lights and a Spider-Man head topper. Give it to me now. Over on Kohl's website, there's a St. Nicholas Square Spider-Man Christmas Village accessory, which shows Spidey in a scarf in front of a big web surrounded by some snowy presents. I just love that. I also saw a little gingerbread Spider-Man neon sign on their site, which is neat. Okay, so either this or the comic book section is going to be the biggest section of this video. Now that we've put up all of our Spidey Christmas decor, both inside and out, it's time to finish decorating the tree by displaying some of the coolest ornaments around. Now, there have been so many Spider-Man ornaments made, it would actually take its own video and probably a year's worth of research to try and document every single last one. So, much like with the stockings, I'm going to go through the eras and highlight my favorites. This is probably going to be nostalgia central for a lot of you, so prepare yourselves for some early memories to come flooding back here in a minute. Firstly, we're going back to 1981 to look at these super cool ornaments from the Santa's World line again. Apparently, there were mini comic books that you could hang on your tree that retold the origins of a few Marvel characters, these being, I believe, Captain America, the Hulk, Spider-Woman, and Spider-Man. The Spider-Man one had artwork from John Romita Sr. and John Buscema, which is just perfect. Next up, in 1994, we have this really cool porcelain ornament from famed sculptor Randy Bowen. Love that hanging upside down on a web pose, and the box art is awesome too, with its what appears to be Eric Larson artwork. In 1996, Hallmark produced their first of many Spider-Man ornaments. This is one of my absolute favorite ornaments of all time. I love how the hooks that go on the tree are two separate web lines, and the sculpt and paint job are spectacular. Just feels like classic Spidey. In 2000, we got this really cool gold cast porcelain ornament of Spidey equipped with Santa gear from Creative License. Just like the Randy Bowen ornament, this was also limited edition. We've talked about Kurt S. Adler quite a bit in this video so far, but we have barely even begun to scratch the surface. We've barely even begun to crawl on the surface, more like it. The 2000s saw an otherworldly amount of Spider-Man Christmas ornaments being produced, especially from Kurt S. Adler. There are so many choice pieces here. First, let's talk about the ornaments that were molded after that iconic merchandising art from the 2000s. I've never owned this one, but it's so cool how much it looks like that art from the mysterious artist that was all over the 2000s Spidey merch. Those Ditko eyes, man. Also, the web in the background looks great. There's also this classic arms crossed pose from the same line of merchandising art, which was produced in both this glossy glass ornament and in porcelain form that was often included in a set with other porcelain Spider-Man characters as well. And boy oh boy will we get to those sets in a minute, because I might love those things more than myself. Actually, I know I do, that's too obvious. This swinging ornament also reminds me of one of those poses from the early 2000s merchandise. Of course, something would be wrong if there weren't any ornaments based on Bagley's omnipresent Ultimate Spider-Man art of the 2000s. This ornament is based on that iconic panel from Ultimate Spider-Man number 6. The red web in the background is a nice touch. What about this classic swinging pose? I call this one the Spider-Man coloring book pose, which is something we're going to dive into heavily next video. It even comes with a smaller Spidey ornament that resembles the cover of Ultimate Spider-Man issue 54. That rocks. I love when you can see the art that these ornaments are directly sculpted after on the box. Also, these ornaments look sick. Also, look at the gorgeous box art on this. My wallet is trembling right now. Something I do already own, though, is this box set of Porcelain Venom, Doc Ock, Green Goblin, Symbiote Spidey, and 2 classic Spideys. The Venom closely resembles that Ultimate Bagley art, and Goblin and Doc Ock also look like they come from the mystery artist of the 2000s. These are like my favorite ornaments ever. They fill me with so much nostalgia. I love the solid black on the symbiote ornaments, and I absolutely love the way Gobby and Ock look here. This is like a greatest hits package of Spider-Man costume designs. The handcrafted porcelain just feels magical to look at. Seriously, these are some of the most iconic pieces of Spidey merch for me. I remember being a kid and always wanting to put those ornaments up the minute the tree went up. They're still always front and center on the tree for me. Take a look at this ornament, by the way. This one reminds me so much of that specific cell from the 1967 cartoon where he's crawling up a wall. There was also a plethora of actual Christmas-themed Spidey ornaments from Kurt S. Adler around this time. There were some cool mini ornaments as well. I really like this Spidey. It gives off major Secret Wars number 8 vibes. The mini Green Goblin is once again based on some classic 2000s merch art. The last couple Kurt Adler ornaments I'd like to mention are these mini plush Hulk and Spider-Man ones. Another Christmas childhood staple. Man, I could honestly do a video like this for Hulk next year. There are so many nostalgic Hulk Christmas ornaments tucked away in my memories. So I'm pretty confident that we've sufficiently covered the Kurt S. Adler ornaments of the 2000s, so let's check out some other companies' ornament releases. Carlton Cards have released some really cool Spider-Man ornaments over the years. This sensational ornament, featuring a Ramita-style Spidey on a web with the iconic original Amazing Spider-Man font, was released in 2003. I didn't know about this one until I started doing this video, and man, do I want it now. How many times have I said something like that in this video already? In 2004, we got this really cool overhead view ornament of Spidey swinging above a comic book skyline. The translucent webs are such a nice touch. In 2005, they released this pretty cool Spidey underneath a lit streetlight. Love the logo on this one. Also in 2005, they released some of my absolute favorite ornaments ever. Again, these little classic-looking Spider-Man, Hulk, and Wolverine ornaments. The yellow and brown suit Wolverine is so good, I can never get enough. In 2004 and 2005, the company American Greetings gave us a couple really nice-looking Santa Spidey ornaments. But now it's time for the big dog of Spider-Man ornaments, Hallmark's Keepsake series. Although Kurt Adler seemed to be the kings of Spider-Man ornaments in the 2000s, it seems like Hallmark makes most store-available ornaments these days. And they've been producing Spider-Man ornaments since 1996, so let's try to cover as much ground as we can. Fortunately, these ornaments are eye candy, so it should actually be pretty fun to go through all the various sculpts they've made over the years. Of course, we've already covered that goated 1996 ornament, so let's skip ahead to what I believe is their next Spidey release, this 2004 Spider-Man 2 ornament. It's always a treat to see some vintage Raimi merchandise, so this rocks. Also, once again, they nailed the webbing Spidey's clinging to. In 2005, we got this upside-down Spidey ornament that really gives me 90s animated series vibes. Apparently, the box had that 90s logo on it, so looks like I wasn't too off base. The 2006 Hallmark ornament gives me strong Ultimate Spider-Man vibes, between the pose and spider emblem on his chest. So in 2007, we got two Spider-Man ornaments from Hallmark. One of them is the black-suited Spidey from Spider-Man 3. You know, I love the Raimi films the most out of all the Spidey films, but the black suit design is not something I've ever been into. That being said though, I'd still buy this just for the fact it's still a black suit ornament, and it's not like there's a million of those. Plus, it's still Raimi Spidey, so that's always cool. Also, apparently, there was a Spider-Man 3 ball ornament, which appears to have been released by Columbia themselves under the Spider-Man merchandise line. I've never seen this before, but that is just too cool. The other ornament Hallmark released is a classic comic-looking Spider-Man crawling on a wall. Between the super small eyes and the really busy web patterns going on, it reminds me a lot of how Jack Kirby drew Spider-Man. I know, Wallet. It's going to be okay, I promise. I actually do own the 2008 Hallmark Spidey ornament. It's an overhead view of Spidey swinging out of the city, kind of like the Carlton Cards ornament from 2004 that we looked at earlier. It reminds me of a particular background that was often used in the later psychedelic episodes of the 1967 Spider-Man series. In 2009, we got one of the coolest ornaments of all time, the cover of Amazing Fantasy 15. The background of the comic cover is painted onto a little square, but Spidey and the crook he's holding under his arm are three-dimensional sculpts leaping off of the page. The little booklet it's a part of opens up to reveals a couple mini pages containing artwork and panels from the original comic. Plus, the back has the little Ditko Spider-Man marquee that was often used in the comics. Seriously, one of the greatest ornaments of all time. In 2010, we got a Spider-Man fighting Green Goblin ornament, which looks really, really cool. 2011 gave us a Spidey that very closely resembles this iconic John Romita Sr. image, though the costume design looks more like that of Scott Johnson's. To coincide with the release of the first Amazing Spider-Man film, there was a movie-accurate ornament released in 2012. I'm not really a fan of this suit, so it's not for me, but if you're into it, I'd imagine this would be a must-have. The following year gave us a Spidey hanging upside down from the top of a building, which looks pretty cool, but I think the coolest thing about it is that it actually plays the iconic 60s cartoon theme. Now that really stands out as a unique ornament.
You press the special button on that one.
Also, I don't know if this is the first year that Hallmark started releasing more ornaments in major retailer chains outside of the Keepsake series, but it's certainly when you start to see it more. For instance, this 5-piece set of ornaments from the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon. This crouching Ultimate Spidey ornament is pretty cool. Honestly, the main thing I don't like about this suit is how the red part on the shoulders don't run down the arms to the gloves. But in a weird way, it's kinda nostalgic for me now, despite the fact I was already a young teenager when these started coming out and never really cared for the series. In 2014, we got a TASM 2 ornament, and that's pretty cool. I love that suit. 2015 gave us a scarfed Spidey hanging upside down with a Christmas gift, which is alright. Nothing too special. The holiday keepsake Spidey ornament from 2016 is definitely one of the best ornaments to be featured in this video. It's Spidey clinging to a reflective window on a building that once lit up reveals the Green Goblin in the background. One of the coolest and most fun ornaments I own. We also got this absolutely gorgeous Venom ornament from this year that tends to be on the pricier side online. But last Christmas season, I actually drove an hour and 45 minutes away from my current residence just to to buy this thing for a little less than half of what it's usually listed for online. Thank God for Facebook Marketplace. Seriously though, this thing is fantastic. Outside of the Kurt S. Adler Venom ornament from the early 2000s, I think this is one of the only official Venom ornaments to exist. The only thing I would add to it would be the white web shooters on top of his hands. Otherwise, it's perfect. 2017 gave us a Spider-Man Homecoming ornament, which looks really good, and another classic upside-down Spidey ornament in the Ultimate cartoon style. I actually really dig it. I also own an Ultimate Spider-Man ornament that's doing the classic pose from the comic Ultimate Spider-Man on a web in front of some New York City buildings. I really dig the colors and overall design of this ornament, so I wanted to mention it here. Though I can't remember what year it came out, and the box doesn't specify, so if anyone knows, leave a line in the comments. 2018's Spidey Keepsake ornament was pretty meh, but it appears from images online that the lenses were reflective, and that is sick. There's also this gold metal looking Spidey face ornament from that same year, which is kinda cool. Honestly, both 2019 and 2020's Keepsake ornaments are really lackluster and not worth spending much time on. 2021's Keepsake Spidey ornament, however, wow. Look at that eye candy. It's Spidey in that legendary Ditko pose with the John Romita Sr. costume. I really gotta get my hands on this thing. 2022 gave us a reissue of the Amazing Fantasy ornament, this time with a red and blue suit and without the little comic flap. However, it does still have that awesome Ditko Spider-Man marquee intact. I happily bought this thing last year at the time I got that Venom ornament. That might have been the single greatest day of my life. Also, there was a pretty cool Miles ornament released that year. For any Spider-Gwen fans, Hallmark released what appears to be a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive Spider-Gwen ornament this year as well, which honestly looks great. 2023's Keepsake ornaments don't excite me as much as the previous 2 years, but they still look good. The first is Spidey shooting a giant web out of his hand, which utilizes his webs really well. I dig that. The other is a 2-pack of Miles and Peter in some classic action poses. Good stuff. This year, the Hallmark Keepsake line gave us 2 ornaments that I actually really like. First, we have Spidey in a Santa hat, but he's swinging on strands of ornament lights instead of his webs, and that's just adorable. Plus, much like the original Hallmark Spidey ornament from 1996, he utilizes the webs as the hooks to place on the tree. Hell yes. We also got a Spider-Man and Green Goblin pair of ornaments that comes in a really cool box. I like how these are separate pieces that you can space apart to your liking on the tree. This year, we got a Spider-Man on a building in front of a reflective window. It has these silver bands around the wrists that reminds me of the Nicholas Hammond suit, and I have a pretty big soft spot for that, so let's friggin' go. I might have to pick this one up, for real. I'd like to quickly mention some of the ornaments that have been sold at the Disney store. Firstly, there's the Spidey sitting on a building drinking a hot beverage. I'm gonna canonize it as coffee since I'm addicted to caffeine. The sculpted lights on the Christmas decorated snowy building light up, and it's a joy to look at. Man, I love this thing. Another really cool one is the 60th anniversary Spider-Man ornament, which showcases Spidey in that Disney theme park live-action suit in front of some comic book art, chronicling his adventures through the decades. Now that is sweet. I found this Disney Store 30th anniversary ornament that shows a sculpted Spidey inside of an ornament, almost like a snow globe, and it is a vibe. Apparently there's also a Spider-Gwen, aka Ghost Spider, ornament, which shows her decorating a Christmas tree. How neat. So I have definitely not even begun to cover every single Spider-Man ornament out there, but I feel as though we have spent plenty of time on this area of holiday joy, and I covered everything I wanted to, so I say, let's move on to the next segment. So now that we've got the tree set up and our living quarters decorated, let's go shopping for some Spidey gifts. And what better gift is there for obsessive Spider-Man fans than some cool toys? Yes, there have actually been a few holiday-themed Spidey toys and collectibles over the years. 1991 gave us some classic PVC Christmas themed Spidey and Hulk figures. These are honestly so cool. Old school merch like this was just emulating the comics at the time, so it almost feels more authentically Spidey than something that's specifically trying to fall in line with whatever current cartoon's art style is popular. Look at that Hulk, man. So classic. I love how his Santa suit is ripping on the back, too. There's honestly a lot of cool little PVC Marvel figures from the early 90s. In 1996, Toy Biz gave us a holiday special 2-pack containing Spider Claus and Miss Mary Jane Claus. Santa Spidey came with a little bag of toys, and there was an exclusive magnet of Spidey and MJ kissing inside of a snowflake. Aww, now isn't that just festive? I love seeing these old Toy Biz figures. I have spotted that exact Spider-Man mold countless times in the wild. Nostalgia overdose. I really dig the box art on this as well. So moving ahead, we're going to take a look at some Spidey snow globes. Now, there's a bunch of Spidey snow globes that have been produced over the years, but these are specifically Christmas themed. First, we have this musical snow globe from our old friends over at Kurt S. Adler, which shows Spidey swinging across a snowy New York with a gift bag in his hands. I love the sculpting on the base of this snow globe. It plays the music from Toyland Toyland when turned on.
This other snow globe, it's moving a little bit fast, but Toyland Toyland is the music featured.
Next, we have a couple Ultimate Spider-Man snow globes. This one has some nice holiday imagery painted onto it, in addition to a lot of little spiders, and features an arm-crossed Spider-Man. This thing also acts as a piggy bank, and seeing as how this is specifically a Marvel Kids product, I think that's pretty nifty. There's a 2018 Walgreens exclusive Ultimate Spider-Man holiday snow globe, which was then recycled for Valentine's Day. There's a Disney Sketchbook Spidey snow globe that actually acts as an ornament. I like the little buildings on the bottom. Also, yeah, this is the Disneyland live-action Spidey suit again. Speaking of Disney, check out this cute little Primark snow globe. Currently, Kohl's has a Spider-Man snow globe from St. Nicholas Square on their website that utilizes the same janky-looking Spider-Man sculpt from their stocking hanger. I do like how it says deck the walls, though, because I hate walls. I always deck them. I guess there's also a cutesy mini Spidey snow globe at Hobby Lobby too. One last snow globe I'd like to mention is this listing for a Primark snow globe showing a cutesy little Spidey in a Santa hat crawling on some buildings. I can't really find any information on this outside of this one specific listing. So, although this box specifies that this product is not a toy, this item is meant to emulate toy soldiers, so screw it. We're putting it in the toy section of this video. In 2007, Kurt S. Adler released the Spider-Man Nutcracker, and it is so cool, dude. I didn't know Kurt S. Adler made literally every possible Christmas decoration in Spider-Man form, but hey, I'm not complaining. The following year, in 2008, Kurt S. Adler dropped the super cool 7-inch Santa Spidey statue, which seems to be really rare. Spidey has a little fabric Christmas hat, and his netted gift bag apparently includes mini Spidey posters. We can see from one of the photos listed that at least one of these appears to be an old school issue of Amazing Spider-Man. Seriously, this seems like such a rare find, and I gotta try to get it at some point if at all possible. It would look great right next to my Diamond Select statue. One area of Christmas Spidey toys that's gotten a nice amount of traction in more recent times is Funko Pops. Personally, Funko Pops are not my thing, but for people who do like Funko Pops, you all eat well. There's quite a few Christmas-themed Spidey Pops. I actually do like this classic web-winged Spidey Pop ornament that's currently out. This year, we got this super cute Lego Christmas Spidey Advent Calendar. This 246-piece set includes a good old classic Spidey, the Green Goblin on a glider sleigh with pumpkin bombs in a gift bag, Venom and Miles in some Christmas gear, Ghost Spider on her drum set, and this really funny Spider-Ham snowman. Wait, Spider Snowham. There we go. This has some cool Christmas scenery to build as well, so any Lego fanatics, here you go. Another bountiful Christmas gift resource are books, and magazines for that matter. Yeah, we're going to take a look at a few obscure Christmas-oriented coloring books, children's books, and a cool little rare magazine story. In 1984, there was both a Marvel Superheroes and Spider-Man Christmas-themed coloring book. The Marvel coloring book has some cute but really funny pages showing Spidey and various heroes palling around with Santa and his reindeer. Well, would you look at that? Guess that's where Lego got their Goblin Sleigh glider idea, huh? Hopefully Goblin isn't planning to use his Lego sleigh for child slavery like he was in the coloring book. Also, yes, the coloring book has mini stories for each hero, which is how I know Goblin was trying to engineer some child slavery. Oh, and shout out to Rhino for making an appearance in the Hulk part of this coloring book. In the Spider-Man coloring book, we see Osborn's plan to conquer Christmas involves little goblin robot elves. This is amazing. Why have we not gotten this in one of the Spider-Verse movies yet? During the holiday season of 1984, an issue of Spider-Man Comics Weekly, which was Marvel UK's weekly black and white reprint series of issues of Amazing Spider-Man, gave us a special Christmas cover. Inside the comic, we can see this iconic image of Spidey and Santa and Peter Parker's Christmas list that supposedly fell out of his pocket. I absolutely love this. Man, isn't it crazy to see Nathan Lebinsky's name in something like this? Talk about a throwback. Alright, so now for something that seems way obscure. If you've seen my Thanksgiving special, you'll remember me covering the nearly forgotten Spidey Super Stories original short stories from the Electric Company magazine in the early to mid-80s. Yes, there was an entirely separate series of Spidey Super Stories that was exclusive to the Electric Company magazine that is really hard to find online. However, I did manage to find a full scan of issue 111, which features an expectedly ridiculous Christmas Spidey Super Story. Spidey is playing a mall Santa for the day when Doc Ock and his blue-clad sidekick Squid steal a present from a child at said mall. The present was actually Ock's freeze gun that Squid somehow managed to sell to the mall. How did any of this happen? So anyways, Spider-Man tries to stop him from stealing the present, but is quite literally frozen in place. A random Deus Ex Machina ray of sunshine beams down from the sky to instantly melt Spidey's snow imprisonment, and Spidey goes back to finishing his mall Santa shift as Doc Ock flees the scene. Wow, this is amazing. I love Doc Ock's specialized octo sleigh as well. If anyone out there wants to really flaunt how big of a Spider-Man fan they are, they need to get a shirt that has Squid on it. Certainly one of the most obscure Spider-Man characters of all time. Ending this entry, we have two children's books based on the Spidey and His Amazing Friends Disney cartoon. First, we have A Very Spidey Christmas, which shows Lady Octopus up to her evil schemes in her octo sleigh as she wreaks Christmas havoc. Also, wow, I did not realize that there have been 5 separate times that either the Green Goblin or Dr. Octopus have ridden an evil sleigh between all the toys and various media throughout the years. That's awesome. The other book is A Merry Spidey Christmas, which features classic villains like Electro, the Goblin, and Rhino. So you've gotten Spidey toys, books, and magazines as Christmas gifts so far. What about clothes? We all know someone that could use some spice in their drip, so let's help them do that with some special Spidey holiday clothing. Firstly, shout out to Bruce's Spidey video once again for teaching me about this awesome John Romita looking Spidey Christmas pin from 1992 and a Todd McFarlane one from 1995. He also showcases this really cool Ralph Martin Spidey Claus tie from 1995 with what appears to be Sal Buscema artwork, though I'm not entirely certain, and another that shows a festive Spidey and Hulk. Man, those are so cool. These days, there's an endless supply of Spidey Christmas clothes, especially for kids. So let's just go over a few of my favorites, instead of trying to track down every single last piece of clothing. Firstly, I'd like to point out that the default artwork for most of these Christmas shirts is usually the classic Romita era, which makes me love the imagery on a lot of them. You can't go wrong with a classic Santa hat Romita Spidey. I really like this Jingle All the Way shirt that I found at Target this year. I love decorative lights, and the design isn't too goofily over the top that I would actually wear this. I also really like this ugly Christmas sweater, simply for the fact that it has the 80s Web of Spider-Man font on it. I really dig this black t-shirt that looks like an ugly Christmas sweater too. Though my absolute favorite has got to be this green Swing Into Christmas shirt from Hot Topic, simply for the fact that it uses artwork from the 90s animated series. Now that's awesome. Of course, there have been plenty of Spidey Christmas hats made over the years, but my favorite is definitely this one. Using the mask to fill in the red part of the hat is a 300 IQ move. Also, the Spidey face is straight up Scott Johnson era merch, along with the font. Based on those aspects, along with the tag, I'm assuming this has to be from the mid-2000s. So there are a lot of Christmas Spider-Man comics. So many that I feel it would be kind of stale to try and give a synopsis of 37 issues in a row. So instead I went ahead and read every Spider-Man holiday issue I could find, and then ranked my 10 favorites. I compiled a list of every Spider-Man Christmas issue in chronological order, and left a pinned comment down below for anyone to check out if they're looking for the definitive Spider-Man Christmas comic list. If I missed anything, feel free to reply to that comment with any missing issues. But remember, it has to be specifically Christmas or holiday themed, so issues that are just winter or snow themed don't count. Anyway, on with the ranking. Number 10. The Dallas Christmas Special. So coming in at the bottom of this list is a bit of a rarity. Spider-Man has had newspaper supplement stories printed over the years for various regions across the country. This supplement specifically comes from the Dallas Times-Herald newspaper from Dallas, Texas. This is a really goofy time, and its inclusion on this top 10 is purely to highlight its silliness. The basic plot involves Peter Parker flying out to Dallas with Jameson to take photos of him schmoozing it up at a party with a bunch of millionaire business tycoons. Of course, course, when they arrive at the festivities, they find that the Santa Claus that was hired is actually the Kingpin, who is trying to hold all of these suits for a sizable ransom. It ends how you'd expect, with Spidey saving the day and making his way back to New York in time to spend Christmas with Aunt May. Honestly, the biggest reason I included this issue was because of how insane it is to see the Kingpin dressed up as Santa Claus in a totally unironic way. That got me pretty good upon my initial reading. Number 9, the 2007 Marvel Holiday Special. This story involves two of my absolute favorite heroes ever. Spider-Man and Wolverine teaming up to take down a perverted Santa Claus who's controlling a Sentinel. Yeah, you heard that right. Wolverine is ditching the X-Men's Christmas party in search of some discarded Sentinels scattered about the city. One of these Sentinels is being controlled by an ex-department store Santa Claus actor who claims to have been fired for being too old, when in reality he was caught stealing $5,000 worth of panties from the store he was Santa cosplaying at. While the Santa Sentinel is on its way to wreak havoc on that department store for firing him, Spidey swings into action to help Wolvie take down the Sentinel, and the day is saved. We see that Peter has to stop Wolverine from giving in to Berserker rage by throwing a cake in his face in order to get him out of his head. Unfortunately, we see that Peter has a holiday tradition of losing his holiday pastries en route to Aunt May's house every Christmas because of Spidey shenanigans, and this year he was hoping to break that cycle, but alas, his heart was too big. However, Logan agrees to bake him a new cake, which is sweet, but ultimately turns out to be a catch-22, as Peter goes to give Jameson some Spidey pics later on in the Bugle, but Jameson decides to sneakily use a picture on that same camera roll of Wolverine baking Peter's cake. So after Wolverine has the embarrassing realization that his photo is plastered on the front page of the next day's Bugle, he and Iceman go to exact their revenge on Jameson before paying Spidey a visit. Yeah, this was just a nice, humorous time, and I love getting to see two of my favorite heroes together for a whole story like this. Number 8. The 2004 Marvel Holiday Special. In Marvel's 2004 Holiday Special, we see J. Jonah Jameson falling asleep to a Christmas Carol playing on TV, while Peter Parker is sent down to the docks to photograph the Avengers in the middle of a battle with the Wrecking Crew. Jonah lives out a Christmas Carol during his dream, starting with a visit from the Green Goblin, who is analogous to Marley's ghost from A Christmas Carol, giving him a warning that the famous ghosts of Christmas Past, Captain America, Christmas Present, The Thing, and Christmas Future, Spider-Man, showed Jameson how his anti-superhero slander and greedy underpaying habits of the Bugle are going to affect his life for the worst if he doesn't change his ways. I love how you can clearly see the movie influence on the characters that had cinematic counterparts at the time. Also, awesome nod to the Amazing Fantasy 15 cover there. After having visions of a potentially homeless John Jameson and deceased team of Avengers after losing that battle at the docks, Jameson wakes up and is changed for the better, as evidenced by the $10 holiday bonus he hands out. Number 7, the 1996 Marvel Holiday Special. So this is another Jameson-centric Christmas tale. There's quite a few Jameson Christmas comics actually, and it's a really, really fun insight into Peter and JJ's relationship. Jonah is playing Santa in his typical self-aggrandizing style, while handing out free gifts to children on Christmas Eve. Peter is of course there to photograph the whole thing, and when JJ leaves the public gift giving to retrieve more toys to hand out, Peter follows him as Spidey, hoping to web him up as a way to waste Jonah's Christmas Eve in a similar fashion that Jonah has by dragging Peter out for an hour to document this self-serving event. Spidey's webbing dissolves in an hour, so it really is an eye for an eye. But when Jonah arrives at the warehouse, where he stockpiles all of his old toys, like super old discarded toys, really driving home how much of a skinflint Jonah is, Spidey is watching from the top of the building when all of a sudden the weak infrastructure gives in and the roof collapses. This pins Spidey and Jonah under some rubble in the freezing snowy cold. When they wake up after the initial impact of the rooftop collapsing in, Spidey quickly realizes that he has no leverage to lift the steel beam that's pinning both Jonah and Spidey underneath all the rubble. However, Jameson is positioned so that he can seesaw the beam off of them. Jameson doesn't want to do this though. He'd rather wait for an hour. Why is that? Because during the fall, Spidey's mask came off, and he had to use the last of his webbing to conceal his identity before JJ came to. And how long does it take the webbing to wear off? That's right. So Peter basically has to try and convince Jonah to move the steel beam before they freeze to death, like you'd have to convince a toddler not to throw your iPhone before you can safely retrieve it from them. It's a great look into Jonah's childlike pettiness towards Spider-Man and makes for a really entertaining read. After 40 minutes go by though, Jameson and Spider-Man are nearly frostbitten when Spidey finally convinces Jonah that losing their lives isn't worth the reveal of his secret identity. And you know what? As soon as that happens, Spidey retrieves his mask, and a newscopter flies over the giant hole in the roof, capturing a snapshot of Spidey and Jonah together that is then used as the cover story for the next day's Daily Globe, in which the paper reports that Jonah is responsible for saving Spider-Man's life. Gotta love that it's the Bugle's direct competitor printing the story too. Yeah, this is just a great look into that classic JJ hating Spidey dynamic. The ending is really fantastic. Number 6. Marvel Team Up number 1. Up next, we have the very first issue of Marvel Team Up from 1972. This story is called Have Yourself a Sandman Little Christmas, and honestly, the biggest reason I included it was for the ending. The story follows an annoyed Johnny Storm, who's having relationship troubles, and Spider-Man around the city as they're trying to track down the Sandman on Christmas Eve. As he's on his way to his mother's house? Yeah, Sandy wasn't actually going on a rampage or a killing spree throughout the city as Spidey and Torch thought. He was just trying to uphold his annual Christmas Eve visit to his mother. He even tells the Torch and Spidey that he'll willingly let them take him into police custody as soon as he's done with this family visit. Of course, after waiting around for a long time, they realize that he escaped through a sink drain in his mother's house. Yeah, they got duped, but they don't sweat it because they realize that what they did was still a good holiday deed. Also, I love how Spider-Man keeps trying to reiterate that the Sandman is a Fantastic Four villain now. Combine that with the fact that Sandman is in his 70s costume, and it makes for quite the time capsule. Also love the little joke Johnny makes about dropping Peter off in Newark. Number 5. Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, issues 11 through 13. So these 3 issues from Nick Spencer's run in 2018 are basically another version of a Jameson Christmas Carol. However, this story is way more fleshed out and gives us such an in-depth look into Jameson's character. Also, it's not as cartoony an adaptation of Christmas Carol as the holiday special was. Jameson is seeing all of his life's events unfold and having all of these supervillains of his past try to attack both him and Spider-Man because he has been lured into a trap by fan favorite C-lister Arcade. At this point in the comics, Jameson knew that Peter was Spider-Man, and he actually started to promote Spider-Man as being a genuine hero now that he knows his secret identity. But all of the years of chaos he's caused during his obsessive spider hate are catching up with him in this issue, as Arcade brings forth the various Spider Slayers and Dr. Stillwell created genetically mutated villains from over the years, such as the Scorpion. Perhaps my favorite moment from this issue involves Frederick Foswell Jr., aka son of the classic Ditko-era crime boss, the Big Man. See, Frederick Foswell was a reporter for the Bugle who led a secret life of crime known as the Big Man. He employed the famous enforcers as his henchmen. Though he had reformed himself after getting caught, and even got hired at the Bugle again by Jameson, he ultimately relapsed into his life of crime. Though he did redeem himself in a final confrontation with the Kingpin by taking a bullet for Jameson. Jameson's extreme anti-Spider-Man rhetoric that he'd espoused over the years made an indelible impression on Freddy Jr., who is now back in this Jameson Christmas Carol to try and murder Spider-Man since he believed Jameson's rants about Spidey being the reason Foswell was killed. I think this is a brilliant way to really make Jameson confront the person he's been and is trying to now grow out of with a genuine consequence. That's why I really like this take on Jameson's Christmas Carol. The Marvel special was super fun, but this actually feels reflective and transformative. Making Jameson directly face his unhinged behavior head-on by dragging out so much Spidey history is both a fun way to revisit these old characters and to make us empathize with a notoriously childish character like Jameson. Number 4. Peter Parker's Spectacular Spider-Man 112. Our 4th entry on this list explores the lonelier side of Peter Parker's life on Christmas Eve. After breaking up a petty crime that a younger kid had just committed, Peter is left trying to figure out who he can spend Christmas Eve with. He goes home to call Aunt May to see if she needs any help with her boarding home, but Aunt May already has everything covered. Peter takes this the wrong way, as if he's being told he's not needed or wanted over at all, and impulsively hangs up the phone. May is left a little bewildered at Peter's sudden ending of the conversation, as she was about to invite him over for Christmas dinner. He then goes to the Bugle to see if Robbie Robertson has any plans, but once Robbie reveals he has a family reunion to attend, Peter takes this as his cue to go make other plans, since Peter's not family. Of course, if Peter would have waited just a few more moments, he would have received an invitation for Christmas Eve and Christmas dinner with the Robertsons. Once he's back home, he tries seeing what the Osborns are up to, but quickly realizes that the newborn baby they have is not going to allow for any relaxing visits. So he then calls MJ to see if she's available, but when the phone goes to voicemail, he doesn't even bother leaving a message, figuring she obviously doesn't want company. Meanwhile, MJ is actually getting ready to see Peter for tomorrow's Christmas dinner that Aunt May was trying to invite Peter over to. The black cat tries calling Peter, but he doesn't pick up the phone in time. So Peter's left feeling sorry for himself because he thinks he's all alone on Christmas Eve with no one to spend time with. He tries to enjoy the night with his trusty cloth black suit. I love the little comment he makes about never wanting to see it again. It genuinely got a chuckle out of me. Though Peter's night isn't completely uneventful, as an armed Santa Claus actor is trying to gun down his next-door neighbors. So Peter jumps into action in the best Spider-Man costume of all time and saves the day. Although the evil Santa disappears into the night, we see the next day at the Bugle that there is a different Santa there, who is handing out presents in his place. Yes, this is supposed to be the Saint Nick. He hands Peter an invitation to May's dinner tonight, ensuring Peter doesn't miss out on something again due to his own self-isolation. And that is why I love this issue so much. Seeing Peter's self-isolation and overthinking be the reason that he's actually alone just hits so close to home. I love the message behind this issue. You might be getting in your own way more than you think. Just slow down and try to be in the moment. Don't assume nobody likes you just because you're overthinking your own self-worth in your head. Also, Peter David wrote this issue, which explains why it's so funny, overflowing with personality, and it's so full of heart. Man, I love Peter David. Plus, the black suit. That's always an A+. Number 3, the 1991 Marvel Holiday Special. This issue finds Peter Parker showing up to a children's hospital to photograph Jameson's $1 million donation. After snapping a pic of the event, Spidey overhears one of the kids saying that the hired clown that was supposed to show up ditched. So Peter quickly leaves the scene and changes into Spidey gear so he can be the one to entertain the sickly children. That really captured my heart. It's just so wholesome. While the children are extremely excited to see the webhead in front of them, Jameson, as expected, is super annoyed and tries to boot Spider-Man out of there immediately. The children try convincing Jameson that Spider-Man actually is a hero by listing off events that actually happened in the comics in which Spider-Man saved their lives. One of the children is actually the brother of Timmy Harrison, the terminally ill child from the famous The Kid Who Collects Spider-Man story. I love when comics actually feel tied in like this. Much like the Jameson Christmas Carol from The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, this issue just makes the Marvel Universe feel so grounded, like it's a real place. Also, I absolutely love the art in this, and I love Spidey's costume. Those lenses almost look proto-Raimi. Eventually, some armed robbers break into the hospital and try holding one of the children at gunpoint in exchange for the cash they're after. This sickens Spider-Man, and he quickly saves the day. Even Jameson is so disgusted that he actually knocks one of these armed criminals out. Right as the day is saved, Jameson is about to tell Spidey that he's actually fine with him sticking around to entertain the children. But alas, Spidey already fled the scene before having to deal with the cops that arrived. I love the ending panel too. It got a nice laugh out of me. So yeah, this wholesome story just warmed my heart. Number 2, the Spider-Man Holiday Special from 1995. This comic is perfect. I almost put it at my number 1 spot, actually. This 1995 Spidey Holiday Special is broken up into 5 short stories. Our first story centers around Ben Reilly, who is spending Christmas Eve protecting the streets of New York City in an attempt to distract himself from the fact that he doesn't really have a life that allows him to celebrate Christmas with anyone. See, in the comics, Ben left NYC for 5 years after his initial battle with Spider-Man and the Jackal, where he thought he was a clone in the 70s. The floating timeline that's used in comics makes it so that by the time Ben comes back in the 90s for the Clone Saga, only 5 years had passed. But now that Peter's retired from superheroing and moved away, and Aunt May's dead, though this obviously wasn't permanent and was later retconned because, of course, Ben has no friends or loved ones to spend the holidays with. After basically being a vagabond for the last half-decade, he feels lonely, out of place, and unable to connect with anyone due to his circumstances. As he solemnly reflects upon his lot in life, he notices someone is falling off a bridge, which quickly springs him into action. Except when Ben safely lands with the woman he had just rescued, he realizes that she wasn't falling, she was jumping. This woman, whose name is Jenny, has just lost her apartment after losing her job and having no money to support herself. We also find that she's got no friends or family around her in this time of need. So you can see how much our boy Ben empathizes with that. In times of extreme isolation and what can feel like insurmountable hardship, it's really quite easy for most of us to feel like we're alone and that there's no point in sticking around anymore. But as Ben's explaining that there's always at least one other person out there who will care, whether you realize it or not, he's quickly pulled into a battle with Z-lister supervillain Scorcher. During his battle, Jenny risks her life to save a young bystander from being crushed by a falling fixture that was knocked out of place by Scorcher, and Ben knocks this guy on his ass. This heroic act fills Jenny with a sense of purpose again, something she had thought would never return to her a few minutes ago when she was about to make that jump. Spidey swings off, and this tale ends. Yeah, so this is obviously a pretty heavy subject matter that I think a lot of us have been able to connect with at some point. If you're already going through some kind of crisis, the holidays can really accentuate your own perceived failures, with the constant emphasis of family and merriment being marketed in your face 24/7. It's nice to see this kind of issue get addressed in a comic, and a bit of optimism like this really works for me. Also, the art is incredible, and Ben's Spidey suit is 30 out of 10. Long live the OG Ben Reilly. Our next story is only 2 pages and has no text at all. It's just a fun little scene showing the Black Cat stealing some toys and goodies from a corporate warehouse and delivering them to children throughout Christmas Eve night. Isn't that cute? Now we get a story with the big boss man himself, Venom. This story is actually called Venom Claus and opens up with Venom approaching a street-working Santa Claus after he's been mugged. I like how the opening splash page misleads you into believing Eddie's about to kill this guy before revealing that he's actually trying to help him get up. That was fun. Eddie tries asking what kind of jerk would assault a Santa worker during Christmas, and the hardened New Yorker just says, "We're in New York. This your first time here?" But Eddie won't let this injustice slide and develops a plan. The next day, Venom disguises himself as the Santa actor and works the same street corner all day in hopes of attracting the people who assaulted that poor Claus the previous night. Well, eventually this plan works, and some armed creeps come up and try to ambush Eddie Claus, while also mugging a helpless older couple. Of course, Eddie reveals himself to be Venom and starts laying down the law of the land. I love when Venom gets shot in the comics. The suit just spits the bullets right back out towards whoever was shooting him. Always such a fun visual. Also, Venom in this is clearly modeled after the 1994 cartoon version. I thought that was a pretty wild novelty, since I don't recall a whole lot of comics that tried adapting the design elements found in the animated series. Right as Eddie's about to kill one of the men who were mugging that older couple, the woman who was being held at knife point actually convinces Venom to just leave them for the cops to come. Just for the sake of making this sweet older lady happy on Christmas, Venom kindly gives her a peck on the cheek and swings away in a Santa hat while singing Venom Claus is coming to town. Yeah, this bangs. This is classic Venom right here. He's intimidating, but he's funny in an off-putting, kind of quirky way. He's willing to kill, but only because he's trying to protect the innocent. Man oh man, Eddie Brock do be one of my favorite characters ever. Our next story shows Willie Lumpkin, a former partner of Aunt May and one-time mailman of the Fantastic Four, visiting May's grave during Christmas season. He's in tears and feeling overwhelmed as he recalls all of the holiday traditions he used to partake in with May, who's no longer here. He doesn't know what to do or where to go, how to cope with this loss. All of those holiday specials they used to watch together, the ornaments they used to put on the tree, none of it matters to him anymore. He can't really bear to even begin to think about celebrating the holidays this year, now that his family is gone forever. But almost like some kind of divine intervention, a strong gust of wind blows away Willie's bouquet of flowers, a few tombstones away, right next to the woman who's mourning her husband this Christmas. She was feeling the exact same way as Willie, as she was overhearing him thinking aloud about his grief. And since they're in the same boat, she offers him to come join her as she goes Christmas shopping. It almost feels like Aunt May was watching him from down below and sending someone his way to keep him from drowning in despair. Definitely a great story. Our last story is about one of the most iconic friendships in all of comics, Spider-Man and the Human Torch. The comic opens up with Johnny meeting Spidey at the Statue of Liberty on Christmas morning for their annual gift exchange. Johnny's having a pretty lousy Christmas after his wife turned out to be a Skrull who was killed, resurrected, and tried to murder him, in addition to his brother-in-law dying and his sister going on a bit of a psycho arc amidst some other cheerful events. Johnny misses the old days, when life was simpler, when him and Spidey could just beat up the Lizard or the Black Fox and call it a day. I love how he brings up the events of Marvel Team Up 1, where they let Sandman visit his mother on Christmas Eve, as Johnny speculates about how that very well could have been a big part as to why Sandman eventually became a hero, which I believe was the case at this point in time in the comics. I love how Spidey has to remind him that he still escaped through a sink drain. Yeah, this is the kind of world building I was talking about with the 1991 Marvel Holiday Special. Love this stuff. Peter and Johnny then exchange gifts, and I honestly think it's so hilarious that Johnny gave Peter a talking Venom toy for Christmas. It even says, "I'm going to eat your brain," just like the real talking Venom action figure of the 90s. Gotta love Peter remarking on how much MJ is going to love that. Peter's gift is genuinely heartfelt though. At first it just appears to be a mini Statue of Liberty, but when Johnny looks at the base, he finds Parker's phone number, in which Spider-Man tells him to give him a ring anytime that he needs to talk. What a super heartfelt way to end this interaction. The following Christmas, Ben is the one to show up to the Statue of Liberty. After explaining the then current clone circumstances, Johnny wishes the best for Peter on his new chapter of life, but still asks if Ben will continue the Spider Storm Christmas tradition. And you know what? This time, it's Johnny that gifts Ben with his number before the two disband. That's such a nice touch, man. And I love how these panels at the end of each Spider-Man's Christmas meetups mirror each other so well. So yeah, that holiday issue is just full of heart, and is honestly perfect for anyone who's having any variety of issues during the holidays. We've got heartfelt moments, a cute little silent story, some comic relief with the OG Venom, and some powerful stories that all lead to one core theme. No matter how isolated you feel, especially during the holidays, you're not. There's always someone. Always. Number 1. Spectacular Spider-Man 173. Topping off this list is a story that personally resonated with me so much that I knew as soon as I finished it, it would be the list topper. Spectacular Spider-Man 173 opens up with Dr. Octopus emerging from the sea in one of his octopods and taking out some petty thieves before hopping into a limo that's taking him to an unrevealed Christmas Eve destination. We then cut to Spidey also taking care of some muggers who are once again attacking a street Santa who have ticked him off by teasing him over a cute little billboard ad that shows Spidey playing with some puppies and kittens, telling him that he's no longer intimidating to street-level criminals anymore. Big mistake. A shisty bugle photographer, Nick Katzenberg, is capturing the whole ordeal on camera and brags about how he's going to spin the story to Jameson, as if Spidey was hurting some innocent partying youths. Of course, after being teased over his perceived softness from the muggers, Peter really doesn't take too kindly to this. Next, Peter goes to the Bugle's annual Christmas party, where Nick Katzenberg can also be found. This time he's taunting Peter for his civilian life, which is really not a good idea as it is, with the last hour Spidey's been having. But then he really crosses the line, after making several gross comments about Mary Jane and destroying the extremely expensive handcrafted crystal dove Pete got MJ for Christmas. Peter's temper flares up and he smashes Nick's head through a foldable table while yelling at the top of his lungs that this is nothing compared to what he'll do next if Nathan tries pulling this again. Embarrassed, Peter leaves the Christmas party and swings on over to Aunt May's. I really love how we get to see Peter's temper in this. Part of what makes Spider-Man feel so relatable and real is that his emotions are depicted in realistic ways. There's been so many times like this where his temper flares out of control, and who can't relate to that? Especially when they felt so belittled. But when Spidey shows up to Aunt May's house, he finds a very unwelcome guest peeking through her windows. Yep, this is where Doc Ock was heading. See, Ock was visiting Aunt May because way back in Christmas of circa 1973 or so, Ock was actually trying to marry Aunt May in order to take control of a nuclear facility that May had inherited from a deceased family member. During this fiasco, May was actually extremely kind to Octavius. It left an everlasting impression on Ock, who cites May as the only woman who was ever kind to him. If you know about Ock's upbringing, that definitely means a lot. But as Ock is peering through the window, he sees that May is already having Christmas with her family. Oh, by the way, look, there's Willie Lumpkin. Ock would just feel like an embarrassment if he tried to interject himself. He has to accept the fact that this potential special Christmas Eve just wasn't meant to be. He feels cold. Right as he's about to go away and leave May and her family in peace on Christmas night, Spider-Man shows up. And since Spider-Man's already had a rough night, he just starts fighting Ock, no questions asked. Even though Ock tries telling him that he wasn't there to fight or cause any problems with Spider-Man, he'll gladly exchange blows with Spidey in his current state of mind. Thanks to Peter's blind rage, the commotion from the ensuing fight actually does disrupt May's Christmas, and her and everyone else come outside to see what's happening. Ock immediately stops fighting Spider-Man, as he's overcome with instant remorse for for disturbing the one person he respects more than anyone on such a special night. He apologizes and slinks away in a really melancholic fashion. And to top it all off, May actually wanted to invite Ock in. She even remarks that if Spider-Man was such a hero, why would he drive away Octavius of all people? After all, from May's perspective, Ock has only treated her with the utmost respect. So Peter's left just feeling kind of bad. And you know what? I genuinely felt so bummed out reading this. Like, I actually wanted Dr. Octopus to beat him this time. This perfectly ties in with what I was saying earlier. Spider-Man is relatable because he's flawed. This is a great example of that. If only he would have had stopped being such a hot-headed idiot, he could have heard Doc Ock out. Of course, Ock is a psychopath, so it makes sense that he didn't want him anywhere near his family again, but still. He kind of made a wrong choice. One that can't really be changed at that point. Between Ock's sense of self-worthlessness preventing him from trying to be with someone that he cares about, really the only person he cares about, and Peter's blind rage turning Ock into a scapegoat, it really made for a touching story for me. That sense of wanting to be around people who seem like they'd be better off without you is heavy, but it's so real. And the hero of the story doesn't really fix that. Truly great writing in my opinion. Also, the Sal Buscema art is so iconic for me. The purple winter skies and all of the snow falling really makes this issue feel like it truly does take place during Christmas. Also, look at this panel. This would go so hard in the center of a black hoodie or t-shirt or something. One last thing I should mention before we leave the comic book segment of this video are the Marvel giant-sized holiday grab bag Treasury Edition comics from the 1970s. Basically, these were giant-sized comics released around Christmas time that included both reprints and eventually original Marvel superhero stories. The covers on these look really cool. So, between toys, comics, clothes, and all kinds of ornaments and decorations, I think we've shopped around for every kind of Spidey Christmas gift imaginable. So let's go ahead and look at some wrapping paper to wrap all of these in. So obviously, there's been a bajillion rolls of Spidey wrapping paper released over the years, but I'm going to try and cover some of the various Christmas-themed wrapping papers. Some of these aren't technically holiday wrapping paper, but they're so cool, and I don't know when I'll ever realistically talk about them again, so why not mention them here? Firstly, I wanted to mention this vintage 70s Spider-Man wrapping paper that I only stumbled upon when writing this video. Look at how cool that looks. I've never seen this before, and it seems pretty damn rare. Wow, that is just great. This 1996 Hallmark wrapping paper is filled to the brim with awesome, iconic 90s Marvel artwork. Look at that Ron Lim Spidey right there. Next, I found this super obscure Bagley Spidey wrapping paper. It was made by Art Wrap Party Limited and appears to be an Australian exclusive. I found two versions of this online. One that's black with gold webbing and one that's red with gold webbing. I bet the black and gold one looks really nice. Next up, we have this elusive 2002 Spidey wrapping paper from the first Raimi film. Look at how awesome that is. The first Raimi film is still my favorite Spidey flick, so seeing merchandise that is specifically from that film is always such a treat. I know there are pictures of me opening gifts wrapped in this paper as a 3-year-old somewhere, but I wasn't able to find it before making this video. Speaking of, I could not find an image of this next wrapping paper I'm going to mention, but I figured I'd talk about it here to see if any of you out there can help me track it down. I remember having some really cool green Spider-Man Christmas wrapping paper from the mid-2000s that featured images of some Terry Dodson Spidey and Black Cat artwork on it. I think it was a bit of a darker shade of green, and from what I remember, the images of Black Cat were kind of in the background, while the main foreground images were just Spidey swinging around. I could be wrong about this specifically being Terry Dodson's artwork, but my fuzzy memory seems to recall Spidey artwork that was at least similar in style, though I'm pretty sure it was Terry's work. Moving along, we have the Ultimate Spider-Man era wrapping papers. For the most part, you're just going to see the same few images of the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon merch that you see everywhere in the early to mid-2010s, but on wrapping paper. Personally, none of these really catch my eye when looking back at them. I mean, it's definitely nostalgic, but it's nothing I would actively seek out to purchase. Though I will say, this red wrapping paper with the white web patterns on it looks very good. I love the art style for Spidey on this. Oh, also this Web Warriors wrapping paper is insane. Purely for the fact that we have classic 2099 and Iron Spider images on the paper. I never thought I'd see alternate Spidey suits like this on a wrapping paper as a kid. My mind would have been blown. The 2017 Spidey cartoon era merchandise has given us some pretty cool wrapping papers too. What I mainly like about some of these is, again, the fact that there's characters on here that I could never imagine being on wrapping paper as a kid. Like, I would have been through the roof if I saw a wrapping paper with Symbiote Spidey or Venom on it back then. Back in my day, you got Spidey and you liked it. One of the absolute best Spider-Man wrapping papers I've seen has some artwork that seems similar to the Beyond Amazing promotion from a couple years back, which was a company-wide celebration of Spidey's 60th anniversary. I actually still have some of these. I love the dark blue and that redrawn iconic Amazing Fantasy 15 pose. Plus we got that awesome, is it Ross Andrews specifically? Classic Spidey pose on there, along with the iconic Spider Signal-esque rounded Spidey face. I got these at a dollar store a couple years ago, and I gotta say, I actually liked the dollar store wrapping papers more than the wrapping papers carried at most major retailers. Also, over on Zazzle's website, there are some really cool Spidey wrapping paper designs. I love this 90s animated series paper and all of these classic comic book designs.
All of you must buy me these.
So now that we're ready to wrap our Spidey gifts in our Spidey wrapping paper, let's throw on some Spidey Christmas television to accompany us. I'd like to give a quick shout out to No Way Home and Spider-Verse. These aren't technically Christmas movies, but they have Christmas season shots in them, so I had to mention it. Also, you can't forget about the Spider-Man Christmas album from Spider-Verse, though of course it's not my favorite Spidey Christmas album. Also can't forget to mention Miles' game. As far as animated Christmas Spidey episodes go though, there's a surprisingly small amount of them. It's kinda odd. Starting from the beginning, there's a few wintry themed villains appearing in episodes of the 67 animated series, but none of those are specifically Christmas themed. I don't believe there's any Christmas episodes from either of the 80s cartoons, so what about the 1994 animated series? Well, if you remember the episode Make-A-Wish, which was an adaptation of the famous Kid Who Collects Spider-Man story, that was actually supposed to be set during Christmas originally. However, due to super strict deadlines, John Semper Jr. decided to get rid of this idea. Yeah, we didn't actually get our first Christmas episode until Spectacular Spider-Man in 2009. This is the third episode of the second season, called Reinforcements. Much like how I did in the Spider-Man Thanksgiving special, rewatching this episode just really made me realize how perfectly the series captures the essence of Spider-Man's comics. The humor is on point, the characterization is really strong, and it's full of touching moments. I honestly don't know what else I could say that hasn't been said before. This is just a GOAT show. But the basic plot follows a renewed Sinister Six trying to hunt down Spider-Man on Christmas Eve at the behest of the unidentified Master Planner. It's a basic plot and it's super fun to watch. The Christmas atmosphere is on point. I love how when Peter burns his tongue on some hot cocoa, his speech is barely decipherable, but when he's thinking in his head, the narration is crystal clear. I could totally see a comic book being written exactly like that. And I thought that was a really nice touch. I love that little moment where MJ's talking about how easily distracted Peter is while trying to give him advice on how to properly handle his feelings for Gwen, and while she's giving him said advice, his mind is immediately drifting to thinking about how beautiful he thinks MJ is.
You're one of my favorite guys.
Would you look at her? She's gorgeous.
Also, is Kraven an alpha male confirmed?
For alpha male to crush.
Man, gotta be honest, I am not a fan of Werelion Kraven. What I am a fan of, though, is how genuinely funny Spidey is in this. Next, we have episode 11 of season 3 from Ultimate Spider-Man called Nightmare on Christmas, in which after taking quite a big fall on Christmas Eve, Spider-Man is going through the basic plot structure of A Christmas Carol in the form of a dream, courtesy of Nightmare. Man, it's so cool to me that they used Nightmare in this, and to top it off, Mark Hamill is voicing him. The basic premise behind Nightmare's version of A Christmas Carol is to show what Peter's life would be like if he retired from the superhero business. We see the failures and public chastisement of the past, which leads to Peter quitting being Spider-Man in the present, which then leads to Peter starting at Parker Industries and becoming a famous business mogul, much like Tony Stark, in the future. However, Peter decides to ultimately reject this potential future, as once Spider-Man retires, the Green Goblin kills off basically every other hero in the city in a very Maestro-esque fashion. Eventually, Nightmare reveals himself to Spider-Man towards the end of the dream, and Spider-Man breaks free from Nightmare's alternate reality by overpowering the fear Nightmare is trying to instill into him with the optimism Peter has gained from appreciating his superheroing. It's a fine enough message, especially for a younger crowd. I was never a huge fan of Ultimate Spider-Man, and I think a lot of it definitely comes from the fact that it was meant for a younger demographic, and it came out when I was like 12. So while I was always into comics, this particular show was just a little after my time. Also, I'm just not a fan of the fourth wall breaking type of humor and the zany sound effects. However, what I really want to highlight here is the Christmas Past segment. When traveling back to the past, Spidey adopts a Ross Andrew John Romita Sr. Spidey look, and the animation just looks like an old washed-out comic book. The audio is even EQ'd to sound like it's from the old 60s cartoon. In fact, the animation directly homages a lot of the old 60s cartoon shots. I love this part of the episode so much. Doesn't that pose look familiar? And also, the fact that they use the Enforcers is just chef's kiss. Man, I wish they'd do a full series like this. Seriously, so cool. The recreations of Amazing Spider-Man number 10 and the famous Spider-Man No More panel are also really nice touches. One more thing I'd like to mention. I love how at the end of the episode, Luke Cage accidentally takes Iron Fist's gift that was meant for White Tiger and references the old school Power Man headband. Nice. Next up, we have the 24th episode of Season 4, titled The Moon Night Before Christmas. The basic plot follows Mysterio's daughter tricking Spider-Man into letting her into the Sanctum Sanctorum, as he's Sanctorum sitting for the night. Also, yes, this takes place on Christmas Eve. Mysterio Jr. is trying to free her dad, the original reformed Mysterio, from this kind of limbo that he's trapped in because of a crappy deal he made with Dormammu. So that's why she was trying to steal a spell book. Eventually everything works out, and Spider-Man and the Mysterios and Moon Knight all enjoy Christmas Eve together. To be honest, I really didn't enjoy this one all that much. The voice acting just isn't that good, and the humor is almost antithetical to my own sense of humor. But I will highlight some of the things that I do like. I think Moon Knight is really fun in this, and the fact he is voiced by Diedrich Bader owns. I think the Christmas-themed villains were a really nice touch as well. Oh, also, I like the Mysterio's design in this is just the classic comic version. Always love to see a good design left untouched. Looking at you, disconnected shoulder and glove design Spidey. Before we end this section, I'd like to mention Spidey and his amazing friends. There's actually 3 holiday-themed episodes, one of which, Halted Holiday, I went over in my Thanksgiving Day special video, as it's kinda a hybrid Thanksgiving/Christmas special. Also, these are aimed at like a first-grade audience, so I don't feel like I need to watch them. I think this video has been comprehensive enough that I can give myself a break on this. The last Christmas animated short I'm going to mention is the Marvel What The Holiday special on YouTube. I'm not going to cover it here because it's not actually about Spider-Man, but I wanted to mention it because there's a little cameo of this Spider-Man 2099 figure. I actually still have this figure in my collection from my childhood. I always loved the shiny paint job and web cape on it. Goated Miguel, goated Spider-Man classics. Well, there it is, folks. The Spider-Man Christmas Special. This was a pretty big undertaking, so I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you made it this far, please feel free to mention any Christmas-related materials that weren't included here. I tried covering a lot, but obviously I couldn't cover everything. I hope you all have a happy holiday season, and fill your Spidey pint glasses with special eggnog, and your Spidey mugs with some hot cocoa. The next Spidey video is going to be similar to this one, but we're focusing on early 2000s Spider-Man merch. So if that sounds like something you'd be into, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, make sure to thwip the like button. I'm releasing some of my own original music soon that's currently on track to be out in about February or March, so if you like any of these bands, check out my music pages. But that's it for now, so be safe, be merry, and I'll see you next time.